Did you pick up this message hoping for comfort? You wanted someone to pat your head and tell you everything will be all right? Stop listening now if that's what you seek, because I'm about to strip away every comfortable lie you've been telling yourself. The truth? You're failing because you've been programmed to quit the moment discomfort arrives. You've been conditioned to believe that pain means wrong direction when it actually means you're getting close to something that matters. Welcome to Timbuktu Lectures, a production of Kilimanjaro News Network, the authentic voice of Africa. We studied the lives of over 25,000 men and women who achieved extraordinary success, and I can tell you this with mathematical certainty. Every single one from Nelson Mandela, Aliko Dangote, Mo Ibrahim to Barack Obama went through a period of such intense suffering that they questioned their sanity, their purpose, and their very existence. The difference between them and the masses who live lives of quiet desperation. They understood a law that I'm about to reveal to you. But first, let me ask you a question that will determine whether you waste the next 20 minutes or transform your entire existence. Are you ready to discover why your pain is actually your greatest asset? Law 1, the doctrine of persistence and necessary suffering. The uncomfortable truth about pain's purpose. Here's what the motivational speakers won't tell you, what the comfort peddlers hide, what the positive thinking crowd desperately avoids. Pain and persistence is not an accident in your journey, it is the journey. Every man or woman who has ever accomplished anything significant has discovered this iron law. Suffering is not the opposite of success, it is the raw material from which success is forged. Let me give you an example that will disturb your comfortable assumptions about how greatness is achieved. Nelson Mandela, the 27-year preparation. You think you know Mandela's story? You know nothing. Here's what they don't teach you in school. On June 12, 1964, when that cell door slammed shut on Robben Island, Nelson Mandela was not the sage and patient leader the world would come to revere. He was a man consumed with rage, plotting violent revolution, his mind burning with hatred for his oppressors. For the first 3 years, he broke rocks in a limestone quarry under the scorching South African sun. His hands bled daily. His back screamed in agony. Guards would urinate on his food. He was allowed one visitor per year for 30 minutes, one letter every 6 months, censored and often never delivered. But here's the part that will shake you. Mandela later said those 27 years were not his punishment, they were his preparation. The man who entered that cell would have led South Africa into a bloody civil war. The man who emerged had been purified by suffering into someone capable of leading a peaceful transition that saved millions of lives. That limestone quarry wasn't breaking his body, it was breaking his ego, his impatience, his need for immediate gratification. The solitude wasn't driving him insane, it was teaching him to think in decades rather than moments. Question for you, what if your current struggle isn't punishment, what if it's preparation for something you can't yet imagine? Aliko Dangote. The humiliation that forged Africa's richest man. In 1977, Aliko Dangote was 20 years old, trying to start a cement trading business with a $3,000 loan from his uncle. Every wealthy businessman in Lagos laughed at him. They called him that small boy playing business. One particular day stands out. Dangote approached a major construction company to supply cement. The executive not only refused to see him but had security throw him out of the building, literally. As he picked himself up from the dusty Lagos street, other businessmen walking by smirked and shook their heads. That night, humiliated and broke, Dangote made a decision that would change the economic landscape of Africa. He didn't decide to give up, he decided to become so successful that no one would ever dare humiliate him again. Today, his Dangote Group is worth over $15 billion. That same construction company? They now beg for contracts from Dangote's empire. The brutal lesson, that humiliation wasn't destroying his future, it was defining his future. Without that pain, he might have settled for small success. The magnitude of his pain matched the magnitude of his eventual achievement. Barack Hussein Obama, the name that should have ended everything. Let me tell you about a man whose story proves that your disadvantages are actually your greatest advantages, if you understand this law. In 2004, Barack Hussein Obama was a nobody. a state senator from Illinois with an African name in post-9/11 America, married to a woman who had never wanted him to enter politics, deeply in debt, and watching his marriage strain under the pressure of his political ambitions. His middle name, Hussein, was political suicide after September 11th. Political consultants told him to change it or use his middle initial. His wife Michelle begged him to quit politics and focus on their family and finances. They were living paycheck to paycheck despite both being Harvard Law graduates. In 2000, Obama had run for Congress against Bobby Rush, a well-established incumbent. The defeat was crushing. He lost by 30 percentage points. The Chicago political establishment wrote him off as an amateur who didn't understand real politics. But here's what Obama understood that his critics didn't. Every disadvantage was actually preparation for an advantage he couldn't yet see. His unusual name would later make him unforgettable in a crowded presidential field. His outsider status would be exactly what America wanted in 2008. His struggles with money would help him connect with middle-class families during the financial crisis. The night he was elected president, Michelle Obama said, "For the first time in my adult lifetime, I'm really proud of my country." But Obama himself was thinking about those nights in their small apartment when the lights were almost cut off, when Michelle questioned whether his political dreams were worth the sacrifice, when every political expert told him his name alone would prevent him from ever winning a major election. The law in action, Obama's pain wasn't disqualifying him, it was qualifying him for something unprecedented. Law 2. The mathematics of breakthrough. Why 99% quit right before success? Here's a statistical fact that will haunt you. Research shows that 99% of people quit pursuing their major goal just months before they would have achieved it. Months. Not years. Months. This isn't coincidence, it's mathematical law. Let me explain the brutal physics of breakthrough. Consider Roger Milla, the 38-year-old failure who conquered the world. In 1990, Roger Milla was 38 years old, ancient in football terms. The Cameroon national team had basically written him off. He was playing for a small club in Réunion, forgotten by the football world, convinced his dreams of World Cup glory were dead. Most athletes would have accepted reality. Most would have quietly retired. But Milla understood something that separated him from every other aging footballer. The closer you get to breakthrough, the more intense the resistance becomes. That World Cup in Italy, Cameroon became the first African team to reach the quarter-finals. Milla scored 4 goals and became a global superstar, and single-handedly changed how the world viewed African football. But here's the part that demonstrates the law. Milla later revealed that just 6 months before that World Cup, he had written a retirement letter. The pain of being forgotten, of watching younger players get opportunities, of feeling irrelevant, it had almost broken him. He was 6 months away from the greatest triumph in African football history, and he almost quit. Mo Ibrahim, the telecom revolution born from rejection. Mohammed Mo Ibrahim founded Keltel in 1998 with a simple idea: bring mobile phones to Africa. Every major telecommunications company, every investment bank, every venture capital firm told him the same thing: Africans don't have money for mobile phones. This will never work. For 3 years, Ibrahim was rejected by 47 different investors. 47. His own board members started questioning his judgment. His family began whispering that maybe he should return to his comfortable consulting job. The breaking point came in 2001. Ibrahim had been traveling across Africa for months, trying to raise capital, sleeping in cheap hotels, eating street food, his suits wrinkled and his confidence shattered. In a hotel room in Accra, Ghana, after another humiliating rejection, he called his wife and said, "Maybe they're right. Maybe this is impossible." She told him something that changed history. "Mo, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. The fact that everyone says it's impossible means you might be the only one crazy enough to prove them wrong." Keltel eventually sold for $3.4 billion. Today, there are more mobile phones in Africa than in Europe and North America combined. Ibrahim didn't just build a company, he transformed a continent. The mathematical reality. Ibrahim was exactly 3 rejections away from the investment that would change everything. At rejection 44, he was 94% of the way to success. Most people quit at rejection 15. Law 3. The Alchemy of Transformation. How pain transmutes into power. The ancient alchemists believed they could turn lead into gold. They were wrong about metals, but they stumbled onto a profound truth about human potential: the basest experiences can be transmuted into the most precious outcomes. But this transformation doesn't happen automatically. It requires understanding the precise mechanism by which suffering becomes strength. Wangari Maathai. From humiliation to Nobel Prize. In 1977, Wangari Maathai started the Green Belt movement with a simple goal: plant trees to combat deforestation in Kenya. The male-dominated political establishment thought she was a joke. They called her a mad woman with a tree obsession. The government harassment was relentless. They arrested her multiple times. Police beat her unconscious during a protest in Uhuru Park. Her husband divorced her, saying he couldn't be married to a woman more stubborn than he was. The breaking point came in 1992. Maathai was leading a hunger strike to force the government to release political prisoners. On the fourth day, weak and dehydrated, she collapsed. As she lay on that dirty cell floor, she had what she later called her dark night of the soul. "I questioned everything," she later wrote. "Was I destroying my life for trees? Was I sacrificing my family for strangers? Had I lost my mind?" But in that moment of complete breakdown, something extraordinary happened. She realized that her pain had created something that comfort never could. Absolute clarity about what mattered most. When she recovered, her resolve was unshakable. She planted over 51 million trees, won the Nobel Peace Prize, and became one of the most respected environmentalists in the world. The alchemical process. Her humiliation didn't weaken her, it purified her purpose until nothing could shake it. Chinua Achebe, the rejection that created a literary revolution. Between 1956 and 1958, Chinua Achebe received 47 rejection letters for his manuscript Things Fall Apart. 47 publishers told him the same thing: Western readers aren't interested in African stories. The rejections weren't just professional, they were personal attacks on his culture, his voice, his right to tell his people's story. One publisher wrote, "African literature is an oxymoron. Stick to copying European styles if you want to be published." After the 43rd rejection, Achebe burned the manuscript. He told his wife, "Maybe they're right. Maybe Africans don't have stories worth telling to the world." But something happened that night that explains why pain is essential to greatness. The burning of that manuscript hurt more than all the rejections combined. In destroying his work, Achebe realized he was destroying a part of himself. He rewrote the entire book in 6 weeks, driven by a fury and clarity he had never experienced. The 48th publisher, Heinemann, not only accepted it but said it was the most important African novel ever written. Things Fall Apart has sold over 20 million copies in 60 languages. It single-handedly put African literature on the world map. The transformation. Every rejection wasn't blocking his path, it was building the pressure that would eventually explode into unstoppable creative force. Manu Dibango, the saxophone that almost stayed silent. In 1972, Manu Dibango was a struggling musician in Paris, playing in small clubs for audiences who barely noticed him. His fusion of jazz, soul, and traditional Cameroonian music was too African for Europeans, too European for Africans. Record labels kept telling him to choose, be African or be international, but you can't be both. For months, he considered giving up music entirely. He was 40 years old, financially struggling, and wondering if his unique sound would ever find an audience. The lowest point came when a club owner in Marseille paid him half of what was promised, saying, "Your African music isn't worth full price." That night, alone in a cheap hotel, Dibango wrote in his journal, "Maybe I should stop trying to be something the world doesn't want." 3 months later, he recorded Soul Makossa, almost as a farewell to his musical dreams. He spent his last 300 francs on studio time, convinced it would be his final recording. Soul Makossa became the first African song to hit #1 on the US Billboard charts. Michael Jackson would later sample it. The song launched Afrobeats as a global phenomenon and made Dibango the father of world music. The crucial point, Dibango was 3 months away from musical immortality when he almost quit forever. Law 4, the compound effect of persistence. Why small actions under pressure create massive results. Here's what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary: the willingness to take small, consistent actions while experiencing maximum pain. Most people think breakthrough requires massive action. That's wrong. Breakthrough requires persistent action while everyone around you, including yourself, believes you're wasting your time. Patrice Motsepe, from tunnel cleaner to billionaire. In 1994, Patrice Motsepe was cleaning mining tunnels for Anglo-American Corporation. His job was to crawl through narrow, dangerous tunnels, checking for safety hazards. It was backbreaking, humiliating work for someone with a law degree. Every day for 2 years, covered in dust and grime, Motsepe would overhear conversations about mining deals, equipment purchases, and exploration opportunities. While his colleagues complained about their jobs, Motsepe took notes. "I was learning the mining business from the bottom up," he later said. "Every tunnel taught me something about ore quality, extraction costs, or equipment efficiency." The transformation moment came when he overheard executives discussing abandoned gold mines they considered worthless. That night, in his small apartment, Motsepe did calculations based on everything he'd learned crawling through those tunnels. He realized the mines weren't worthless, they just required different techniques and lower operational costs. Using his savings and a small loan, he bought his first worthless mine for $7,000. Today, Motsepe is worth over $2.9 billion. He was the first black African billionaire. His company, African Rainbow Minerals, operates across the continent. The compound effect, 2 years of humiliating tunnel work, created the foundation for billion-dollar success. Every day he wanted to quit, he was actually getting closer to breakthrough. Folorunsho Alakija, from secretary to oil baroness. In 1976, Folorunsho Alakija was a secretary at a bank in Lagos, earning $50 per month. Her dreams of business success seemed impossible. She had no capital, no connections, and lived in a one-room apartment. But Alakija understood the compound effect. Small, consistent actions in the right direction eventually create unstoppable momentum. Every evening after work, she would attend business seminars and networking events. She couldn't afford the entry fees, so she would volunteer to help with registration just to hear the speakers. For 3 years, she did this religiously. In 1979, she started a fashion design business with $100 borrowed from her sister. While building her fashion company, she continued learning about other industries, particularly oil and gas. The breakthrough came in 1993 when she applied for an oil prospecting license. Government officials laughed at her application. A fashion designer wanting to drill for oil seemed ridiculous. But Alakija had spent 17 years learning, networking, and building credibility. When oil was discovered on her license area, she became one of Africa's wealthiest women, worth over $1 billion. The compound reality, 17 years of small, consistent actions while others doubted, created extraordinary results. Law 5, the proximity principle. Why pain means you're close. Here's a law that will revolutionize how you interpret struggle. The intensity of resistance is directly proportional to the proximity of breakthrough. The closer you get to something significant, the harder life pushes back. This isn't punishment, it's physics. Consider Tony Elumelu, the bank that almost broke him. In 1997, Tony Elumelu borrowed $100,000 to buy Crystal Bank, a failing Nigerian institution. Everyone said he was insane, a 34-year-old with no banking experience buying a bank with more debt than assets. For the first 3 years, Elumelu barely slept. The bank was hemorrhaging money, regulators were threatening to shut them down, and his personal finances were stretched to breaking point. His wife later said, "There were nights I found him on the bathroom floor, crying from stress." The crisis peaked in 2000. The bank needed $5 million immediately or face closure. Elumelu had exhausted every option, no investor wanted to touch a failing bank, and he had no more personal assets to pledge. That night, alone in his office at 3 a.m., Ilumelu wrote 2 letters. One was his resignation as CEO, the other was a last-ditch proposal to potential investors. He decided he would send whichever one felt right in the morning. At 8 a.m., before he could make his decision, a phone call changed everything. An investor who had previously refused was now interested. They had been watching how Ilumelu handled the crisis and were impressed by his resilience. The $5 million investment not only saved Crystal Bank but launched Ilumelu's banking empire. Today, his United Bank for Africa operates in 20 countries, and his investment company has assets worth over $5 billion. The proximity principle in action, Ilumelu was literally hours away from quitting when breakthrough arrived. The maximum pain preceded maximum gain. Law 6, the identity forging process. How struggle creates unshakable self-concept. The most successful people don't just survive difficulty, they use it to forge an identity that makes them virtually unstoppable. Pain doesn't just teach you what you can endure, it teaches you who you truly are. Consider Strive Mosiliwa, the 14-year battle that built a telecoms empire. In 1993, Strive Mosiliwa applied for a telecommunications license in Zimbabwe. The government response was simple: no. Not maybe later, or under these conditions, just no. What followed was a 14-year legal and business battle that would have broken most entrepreneurs. The Zimbabwean government used every tool at their disposal. They froze his assets, intimidated his family, and deployed state security to harass him. In 1999, 6 years into the battle, Mosiliwa was personally broke. His legal fees had consumed his savings, his other businesses were struggling, and his lawyers advised him to give up. No telecommunications license is worth destroying your life, they said. The lowest point came when government agents arrested his 16-year-old son on fabricated charges. That night, as his family huddled together in fear, Mosiliwa's wife asked, "Is this worth it? Can't we just live a normal life?" But something had happened to Mosiliwa during those years of struggle that most entrepreneurs never experience. The battle had transformed his identity. He was no longer someone trying to get a license, he had become someone who stood for principle regardless of cost. "I realized I wasn't fighting for a business license anymore," he later said. "I was fighting for every entrepreneur who had ever been told no by corrupt officials. If I quit, I wouldn't just be betraying myself, I'd be betraying every future innovator in Africa." When he finally won the license in 2007, Econet Wireless became one of Africa's largest telecommunications companies. Today, Mosiliwa is worth over $1.8 billion. The identity effect, the struggle didn't just teach him business, it transformed him into someone for whom giving up was literally impossible. The master law, the pain-to-purpose conversion. The ultimate secret of all greatness. After studying thousands of success stories, I've discovered the master law that governs all extraordinary achievement. Your greatest pain always contains the seeds of your greatest purpose. The thing that hurts you most deeply, the struggle that seems most unfair, the challenge that feels most overwhelming, that is precisely where your unique contribution to the world is hidden. Now let's take a closer look at the Obama story. A complete case study, if you like. Barack Obama is the complete case study that demonstrates every law we've discussed. Barack Hussein Obama was born to a Kenyan father and white American mother in 1961. His father abandoned the family when Barack was 2. His mother remarried an Indonesian man, and they moved to Jakarta, where young Barack experienced his first identity crisis: too American for Indonesians, too exotic for Americans. Back in Hawaii, living with his grandparents, Obama struggled with racial identity in a way that would define his entire worldview. He was too black for white circles, too white for black circles, too intellectual for street credibility, too street smart for elite acceptance. At Columbia University and later Harvard Law School, Obama excelled academically but felt disconnected from both the privileged white students and the working-class black community he wanted to serve. "I didn't fit anywhere," he later wrote. After Harvard, Obama made a decision that shocked everyone. He became a community organizer in Chicago's South Side, earning just $13,000 per year. His Harvard Law classmates thought he was wasting his education. For 3 years, Obama tried to organize residents of Altgeld Gardens, a housing project devastated by unemployment and despair. Most of his initiatives failed. Residents didn't trust him, a mixed-race Harvard graduate trying to understand their struggles. Politicians ignored him. Media dismissed him. The breaking point came during a meeting about asbestos in the housing project's buildings. Obama had spent months organizing residents, promising them answers. When the housing authority officials arrived, they brought no solutions, just bureaucratic excuses. As angry residents shouted at him, Obama realized he had promised something he couldn't deliver. That night, he wrote in his journal, "Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm just another Ivy League kid playing at social justice." Obama entered politics with the Illinois State Senate in 1996, but his outsider status continued to hurt him. In Springfield, he was too liberal for conservative Democrats, too pragmatic for progressives, too intellectual for practical politicians. The devastating congressional defeat to Bobby Rush in 2000 was particularly painful because Rush dismissed Obama as not black enough for the South Side. Rush's campaign literally questioned Obama's authenticity as an African American. Michelle Obama begged Barack to quit politics. They were drowning in student loan debt, struggling to pay their mortgage, and she was tired of being a political widow while Barack traveled constantly for a career that seemed to be going nowhere. The pain-to-purpose conversion, 2004 to 2008. But here's where Obama's story demonstrates the master law: every element of his pain became the foundation of his power. His abandonment by his father made him a devoted father and husband who understood the importance of family stability. His racial complexity made him the perfect candidate for an America ready to move beyond simple racial categories. His outsider status made him the perfect change candidate when Americans were tired of Washington insiders. His financial struggles connected him to middle-class families during the 2008 financial crisis. His intellectual approach distinguished him from typical politicians when Americans wanted thoughtful leadership. His unusual name made him unforgettable in a crowded primary field. The 2004 Democratic Convention keynote address that launched Obama to national prominence was directly built on his pain. The central theme, "There is not a liberal America and a conservative America, there is the United States of America," came from a lifetime of not fitting into simple categories. Even Obama's presidency demonstrated these laws too. The unprecedented opposition he faced, including racist attacks on his legitimacy, only strengthened his resolve and clarified his purpose. Every attack that was meant to diminish him actually highlighted the historic nature of his achievement. The complete pattern: Obama's story shows every law in action. 1. Necessary suffering: every pain shaped him for leadership. 2. Mathematics of breakthrough: he almost quit multiple times right before major victories. 3. Alchemy of transformation: his disadvantages became his greatest assets. 4. Compound effect: years of small, consistent actions while others doubted. 5. Proximity principle: maximum resistance preceded maximum breakthrough. Identity forging: struggle created unshakable self-concept. If you are still listening till this point, congratulations. This demonstrates you belong to the 1% who can demonstrate persistence and resilience to achieve their purpose. But here is your moment of truth. The question that changes everything. Now I turn to you with the same brutal honesty I've applied to these examples. You've read about others who transformed pain into power, but reading about transformation is not the same as choosing it. Here's your moment of truth. What pain are you currently avoiding that might actually be preparing you for something extraordinary? What struggle are you interpreting as punishment that might actually be preparation? What disadvantage are you trying to eliminate that might actually be your greatest advantage? The final challenge. I'll end with the most uncomfortable truth of all. You already know what you should do. Deep inside, beneath all the fear and rationalization and comfort seeking, you know exactly what action you've been avoiding, exactly what pain you need to walk through, exactly what dream you've been too scared to pursue fully. The question isn't what to do, the question is whether you'll do it. Will you be like the 99% who quit right before breakthrough, or the 1% who understand that pain is not the opposite of success, it is the raw material from which success is forged. Your pain is not your enemy. It is your evidence that something magnificent is trying to be born through you. The choice is yours. The time is now. What will you do with your pain? Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us, every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Your pain has prepared you to answer that question. Now answer it.
Congratulations for following this lecture till the end. You have just demonstrated the very first, and perhaps most crucial law of extraordinary achievement. The power of persistence. You have held on, absorbed uncomfortable truths, and pushed through the natural human inclination to seek comfort. This is not a lecture to be heard once and filed away. This is a blueprint for transforming your very existence. So, I challenge you, listen to these Timbuktu lectures again and again. Let these brutal truths sink into your bones. Share them with your friends, with your discussion groups, with anyone who claims to be seeking success but is running from the necessary pain. Make this a cornerstone of your daily mental diet. But more importantly, what are you going to do with this unique knowledge? Are you going to be the 99% who nodded along, felt inspired for a fleeting moment, and then returned to their comfortable lives, their excuses, their quiet desperation? Or will you be the 1%, the rare few who truly understand that your pain is your promise, your struggle is your raw material, and your greatest breakthroughs lie just beyond the point where everyone else quits? The clock is ticking. Every moment you delay, every excuse you make, is a moment lost. The world doesn't need more people who understand the theory of success, it needs people who embody it. Your pain has prepared you. Now, what will you do with it? The time for action is not tomorrow, it is not next week, it is now. Go. Act. Transform. Timbuktu Lectures is a production of Kilimanjaro News Network, the authentic voice of Africa. Don't forget to like, share and scan our QR code to access our YouTube channel. We broadcast in Swahili, Arabic, Hausa, English and French.